Check, check. Thank you, Jenny Apart. I was unintentionally jamming on mute. I changed my microphone. So now you should be able to hear me, right? Alrighty. We're back. What's up, Jetson Live? What's up, Wednesday? What's up, Jenny? Good to see you. You are here. Oh, hello, Nick. We're all here for WordHack. WordHack is a show where we play the latest and greatest royalty-free music and just really listen and vibe. I'm just kidding. We don't just play the latest royalty-free music. This is your first time here with us. WordHack is a monthly show that has now been running for, as of this month, 6.5 years. Ooh, happy 6.5 years old, WordHack. So it's a monthly show. Historically, it's been at Baby Castles, which is a DIY indie game arcade and event space here in New York. But since March, we've been doing the shows online. And WordHack is a monthly show dedicated to the intersection of language and technology. So it's a series of talks, performances, presentations, all different kinds of people that are in some way working with the way words and computers technology work together. So we'll have writers, we'll have researchers, academics, we'll have linguists, game makers, digital artists, technologists, all sorts of people from different avenues and areas of research, just kind of coming together and around this intersection of language and technology, and meeting each other, learning from each other in a kind of fun, low stakes place. So we've got a really great show lined up for you. I guess we can kind of segue into my main intro of the show. I'm going to fade out this music. We've got a really great lineup for you tonight. We've got James Ryan here. We've got Olivia Jack all the way from England with us, and we have Shannon Finnegan. They're going to be a great set of lineup. A great set of featured presenters for you this evening, so I hope you are excited about that. I know I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, to start things off, at the start of every WordHack, we have something called the Open Projector. So the Open Projector, I come from a poetry background, and in my poetry background, it was really important to me when I first showed up in New York City back in 2011 to be able to. I didn't know anybody other than my roommate who had just also moved there, and yeah, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any places I could read my poems, or I didn't know any journals I should submit to or anything. But I really benefited from having there be some open mics I could go to, and I didn't need to know anyone or have anyone think I was cool. And I could just put my name on a sheet of paper and read my bad poem, and get to know some other people who maybe thought my poem was just as bad as theirs, and we had that in common. And then we could grow together and read each other's work, and that's how a community forms. So I like to provide that same sort of opportunity here at WordHack, where especially with technology spaces, there can be a lot of hurdles to getting your work seen, especially in the early experimental stages. So we like to have this Open Projector be a section for projects in process, or for recently completed things that from people who maybe aren't part of the community, and that can be a way that people introduce themselves to our group here. That being said, that was a long spiel about the Open Projector, which tonight, I think, perhaps deterred by the cold or the onset of holidays causing heavy work weeks, we have no one signed up on the Open Projector this evening. And that means that the Open Projector will be performed by Todd. Yes, I am taking on this role because there must be something on the Open Projector, and I have a new piece to share with you here, which is from my project Hitchhiker. So those of you that don't know or haven't seen it before, I have a Chrome extension called Hitchhiker here. All right, let me get the link up and running. Okay, great. Sorry, just getting that set up here. Here we go. So this is Hitchhiker. It's a Chrome extension. I've got a room set up, and I've got a handy new invite link that I'm posting in the chat here from Baby Castles. That's true, Nick. We could have listened to a lot more saxophone music in lieu of the Open Projector. Maybe I'll do just like a solid 15 minutes of saxophones. But this link I just posted in the chat should take you to a page like this. If you don't have Hitchhiker installed, it will give you a little link where you can install Hitchhiker, but otherwise you can just join the room, and then you'll show up in here with me. See if anyone is joining, but I have a little holiday shopping guide from Hitchhiker that I have put together that I think you might enjoy. So if anyone wants to hop in, got that link in the chat there. Lets you install Hitchhiker. Hitchhiker takes like, I don't know, 10 seconds to install if anyone wants to join along. Otherwise, I'll be streaming the output over here, but it's a little more fun to just see it on your own screen. So we'll take a little ride in the web browser. All right, I see we got Josh Jett, we got Thummy, we got Eli and Nessie. Nice to have all of you aboard. I'm going to be starting this train rolling in a second here. Make sure we're all on this nice holiday shopping page. Then I'm going to get started in a moment. All right, let's do it.
Welcome to the Hitchhiker Guide to Holiday Shopping. Shop for that special someone with our helpful tips. If there's one thing everyone wants this holiday season, it's to be outside. But not just outside. An outside that is warm. How can our gifts create an outside that is warm? That is the question. The secret is sand. Sand. ton feels like a good price. But how much do we need? Good. Looks like 8 tons should be enough to fill your friend's living room with sand. We're partway there. Now what to put in all that sand? How about cactus? Just $35. Smaller cactus, $85. But rare. Great, we have plants. Now what about animals? Buying animals on the internet is immoral, usually. But what if we could make the animals come to you? Cute and alive. Your friend is practically living outside now. But how to feel that warmth of the desert? Maybe this. It's tall. Or wait. I have it. You need the sun. Hot. Hot and outside. A Christmas miracle. Okay, one down. What about for your friend or family member who you don't see much anymore and might be feeling lonely? You could perhaps buy a 4K stock video of friends hanging out. And send it to them. Only $79. Or put it onto a DVD or flash drive and mail it, if you are crafty. But videos of strangers are a temporary pleasure. What about something that lasts? These high-quality Instagram followers are around for good. $53% off. For some new friends. Friendship level over 9,000. Lol, that corn was supposed to be Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. Friends. A friend you can talk to. A friend for your friend when you're not around. I will be your unconditional friend. Awesome. But maybe the person you're shopping for wants to spend some time away from the screen. Something real might be better. A friend for your home. A friend in Chrome. Hey friend. Looking good friend. A famous friend. An inspirational friend. The richest friends in the world. Inspiring. Your friend will love taking selfies with their new quarantine-safe friend. Or maybe your friend wouldn't feel so lonely if they saw more faces as they went about the day. Or one particular face. But in the end, there's no substitute for spending time together. Which is why we recommend reserving the domain name spendingtimetogether.com for your friend or family member. Every time they log in to change the DNS setting or cancel auto-renewing payments, they will think of you. Also of interest, Spending Time Together Club, or spendingtimetogether.us, or this concludes the Hitchhiker Guide to Holiday Shopping. Please remember to use affiliate code Hitchhiker for any bulk orders of sand. And if you'd like to sign up to be notified of future Hitchhiker performances, you can do so here.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, everybody. That was my my Hitchhiker holiday shopping guide. If you'd like to hop on our Hitchhiker specific email list, I've got a link for you here. It's pretty easy to install and fun. I'm going to try to start on the Thursdays that aren't WordHack starting in 2021, doing a weekly Hitchhiker show and get some people that are not me doing shows as well. I find that just like 5 to 15-minute little Hitchhiker shows can be a really fun way to spend some time, especially if we're all remote from each other. So yeah, that's Hitchhiker. I hope you'll check it out, and that is also our open projector for this evening. Oh, okay. I'm just seeing Leap saying it was alarming. The first time Hitchhiker opened on my computer, I had forgotten I had installed it. Yes, I'm sorry about that, Leaps. I've now more recently patched it, so it won't. It'll automatically disconnect you when you don't have the window open. So don't worry about that happening again. PSD MGN3 YPV 8F HBF is asking how to sign up for the Open Projector. The Open Projector, I have a little form for it, but it's goes off the main With Friends event page. If you if you give a suggested donation, and suggested donation can be 0 for this, then you can get the link to the Open Projector. I just try and not make it just like a public link, because I don't want just a bunch of randos rolling in and taking up all the slots and maybe doing random stuff on the stream. But if you want to hop in there for a future one, that would be great. Awesome, I appreciate it. Can suggested donation be negative? Asks Nick. You are welcome to try, but I do not believe it can. Well, thanks so much for checking out Hitchhiker in this Hitchhiker Open Projector. But now I'm happy to move us over into our first featured presenter, and I'm very excited to have Olivia Jack with us here, all the way from England. Olivia is the creator of a really outstanding online coding language called Hydra, which is used to make visuals in the browser and can do all sorts of cool live coding visual effects, either in the browser or inside, since a lot of modern text editors are browser-based under the hood. It can do stuff inside of text editors like Atom. Yeah, Olivia is really great, and she's been making some really cool online collaborative spaces as well. So yeah, please join me in welcoming Olivia Jack to WordHack. Woo! All right, Olivia. I'm switching over, and okay, you are on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Todd, for the introduction. I'm just going to try my screen share one more time to make sure I get it right. Okay, there we go. I'm so excited to be here. And I'm actually in Berlin, in case it matters to anyone. Right. But I'm mostly on the internet anyways, and just on my computer. So it doesn't matter where I am, I don't think. Yeah, I'm an artist and a programmer, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about Hydra, which is this online sort of platform language that I make, and also just my ongoing explorations into code as sort of a live and collaborative instrument. And so right now, this window that I'm showing is my browser. And this is a Hydra sketch. And when I show the code, you can see kind of the text on the screen that is creating this sketch that's behind it. And I'm going to give a background introduction to Hydra for those who haven't seen it before. But when you load the editor, it first loads sort of this window, and then it also loads a bunch of sketches that other people have created. And then right in the editor, you can directly edit the code and rerun the sketch.
Hey, Olivia, sorry to interrupt you. The resolution's pretty low.
Okay.
I don't know if the audience can read the text.
Yeah, this happens with I guess, complicated visuals. So maybe it's also worth it to just go to the website also. I'll share the link in the Twitch. Did it get any better?
Oh yeah, it just got a little better.
Okay, so yeah, with the blank screen, it got better. So Hydra works a lot like an analog modular synthesizer, and basically the concept is that you sort of start with some sort of signal, and then you can add on transformations to modify that signal. So for example, here I could start out with a shape, and then I could repeat the shape. And then I could, I don't know, change the color of this shape. And I could start to rotate it. And so the basic idea is that you can kind of keep building these transformations on top of each other. And then one of my main actual motivations for creating this was I wanted to have an easy way to combine different live video sources together, and to just, and I started kind of writing a JavaScript library to do that. And then I found myself editing the code a lot just in the browser console to see what was happening. And that's how I kind of got started with live coding, is that the easiest way to sort of try things out was to directly edit the write code in the browser console and see sort of what it did on the screen. So for example, instead of using a shape as a source in Hydra, I could use my camera. So here I'm gonna initialize the camera, and then I'm gonna do, I will show my camera on the screen, and then I could similarly apply sort of a color filter. I could also start rotating my face, but maybe I'll get dizzy just looking at myself rotating, so I won't do that. And another thing in Hydra is you could use any other application as a source, and you could also, anyone else who's using the website, they can kind of give themselves a public name, and then if you know that name, you can use what they're doing as a source for what you're doing. And I guess part of my interest in this has been also sort of thinking of the internet as like a constant flow of information, and rather than, I feel like a lot of times things on the web are thought of as pages or sites, and the idea that you have this like scrollable text is so kind of common to what a website is supposed to be. And so part of Hydra is, well, what if I think of the web not as a series of kind of scrollable text, but as a video synthesizer where you can route different video sources to each other. And so I thought it might be fun actually to use also the Twitch stream as a feed right now. So I will see if this works. I didn't actually test this before, so we'll see. So there I can initialize a screen source, and then now I'm hopefully streaming the Twitch into here, and I can maybe blend it with my face as well. And so here I can see the Twitch stream, and that's good. Now I can see the comments a little bit. Anyways, and so part of, I guess for me, Hydra was just something I started experimenting with for myself, and also because I taught a lot of coding classes, and I kind of wanted a lot of times in coding workshops and stuff, people are just, it's themselves in front of their computer, and I kind of wanted to force people in some way to be a little bit social or collaborative with what they were doing. And so that was partly how I started this to make it easy to stream and share things between different people. And so now there's a really active community of people using Hydra and using it for things that I never really imagined, and that's really exciting. And so another thing that I created is a Twitter bot, so you can directly share your code and a screenshot of the code. to Twitter. And so basically when you go to the Twitter bot, you can see all these sketches that other people have made. And so this was one that I saw, for example, earlier today that someone had made. You can see these sketches that other people have made and then click and immediately open the editor with that code and the sketch behind it. Probably my frame rate will go down again because this is a very complicated visuals. And then so the idea being this asynchronous collaborative exploration of visuals on the web. And it's been really interesting to see how people kind of like learn from each other. And if you edit someone's sketch and re-add it again, then it shows your sketch and also the sketch that your sketch was based on. And so to me, it was interesting to kind of trace how an idea that someone created could evolve into something else and people can build on what they're doing. Yeah, I think I've done a lot of sort of just explorations around this on code, on the internet and live video. And for example, here's one of these, which was, oops. This was just live coding a live stream of Times Square and a live stream of a fish tank, and then kind of, yeah, editing how they mix with each other. And to me, part of my interest in this is just to sort of have these different dynamic things that are happening and not necessarily being in control of everything that's happening, but just to sort of like create different contexts for collaboration, almost even between like fish and humans or something. And I also, when I perform live with Hydra, I like to use the editor, sort of all the actions of the editor as sort of part of the visuals that I'm creating. And so this was a performance with Jonathan Roos in Rotterdam last year, and he was doing the music and I was doing visuals. And I'll press play in a sec, but basically all the visuals you see are just basically me dragging the cursor across the screen and sort of pressing enter at different times and kind of improvising in that way. Yeah, so a lot of times, I guess, instead of having, I feel like sometimes the text competes with the visuals behind it. I like to sort of just use my text editor as a live instrument. And along with that, these are some experiments that I've been doing recently, basically using pixel colors to control sound. And so basically, the squares are just, it's sampling a pixel color at a certain area. And when the pixel changes a lot, then it triggers a sound. And so something I've been interested in lately is to sort of just put these different languages in conversation with each other. So code, like this physical space that I'm inhabiting, the image on the screen, and the sound. I'll press play and maybe it will make more sense. So this isn't using any kind of tracking or anything. It's just pixel color changes. and then I'm using the code to change the image. Yeah, so musically it's pretty simple, but it's just kind of triggering samples using using code and also using the changes in the pixels of the image. The second to last thing I want to show is there's also a collaborative editor for Hydra that's just kind of open to anyone, and there's 3 channels of visuals that anyone can sort of edit the code for that channel. And I found that having some structure in this way, and you can only write code, you can't write anything else, created this online environment where people can just at any hour of the day log in and see what kind of visual someone else is making, and there's no login required. You just give yourself a name and you can edit the code. And then I found people actually like have met each other through this, and like sometimes write short messages in the comments like, hey. Luckily it hasn't gotten too big or anything where I have to worry about kind of locking it down more, but it's been really interesting for me. And also I think part of my creative process, I really like kind of really get inspired by other people. And so creating these ways to collaborate helps me learn how to use my own tool in a different way, and also helps me to be inspired from other people. The last thing that I want to show is some explorations I've been doing lately of creating a hybrid code and graphics editor. And I think it's very much in development, but a lot of the things I want to explore with this are sometimes being able to just move things, and then other times being able to use code and having sort of a fluid way of combining both of those things. Thank you so much. And thanks again, Todd, for organizing this.
Sure. Thank you so much, Olivia. Thank you for joining us, even though it's late where you are. Oh, yeah. Big claps. And let's get some claps in the chat. Oh, yeah. Got to get those claps in the chat. Clapping it up. Oh, yeah. Our DNA is as a live event, so love to have as much of that kind of audience clapitude as we can to spread around. Awesome, that was really cool, Olivia. Thank you for sharing with that. Great. So that brings us to our next featured presenter, who is James Ryan. James is a visiting professor at Carleton College, and is a digital media and computational artist, researcher, scholar, does a lot of research into generative story worlds, and has done a number of interesting projects relating to that, and a lot of research on a different kind of computationally generated narrative worlds. Really excited to hear what he has to share with us about that, but please give it up for James Ryan.
Thanks so much, Todd. I'm going to share my screen here.
All right, there we go.
Okay, good. Get my zoom how I want it. It is 1958, and this man is Sheldon Klein. He's a PhD student at Cal Berkeley who's doing field work to document the indigenous language Kawayasu spoken in Southern California. And Sheldon Klein is something of a Renaissance person. He publishes poetry in literary quarterlies, and he just wrote a paper called Zen Buddhism and General Semantics, in which he argues for correspondences between Zen practices and Western linguistics. And somehow in the late 1950s, this Renaissance person, Sheldon Klein, becomes involved with computers, big hulking beast mainframes that take up entire rooms. Perhaps his first encounter was with this one. That's the Cal Digital Computer, or CalDIC. By 1961, Sheldon Klein is working at System Development Corporation, or SDC. This is the first software company, and this is where Sheldon Klein begins his messy project. I'm James Ryan, and I'm on the faculty at Carleton College. At SDC, Sheldon Klein gets involved with this man. This is Robert F. Simmons, and these two are deeply inspired by the work of another person at MIT. This is Victor Yngwie. That's him in the early 2000s. Here's him in the 1940s. You'll have to interpolate to imagine what he looked like in 1960 when he produced these computer-generated nonsense sentences. Yngwie took a children's book called The Little Engine by Lois Lenski, and specifically took its first 10 sentences and built in a computer program a context-free grammar that could generate, first of all, those 10 sentences, and most of all sorts of millions of other sentences that are possible by reusing sentence structures and vocabulary from the book. The sentences are evocative. They read as follows: when engineer Small keeps Small in 4 fireboxes, he keeps driving wheels, his steam, it in 4 black and oiled fireboxes. He has 4 polished sand domes. He has 4 proud, little, polished and proud boilers under proud bells, steam and the whistles in 4 whistles. When steam is proud of the 4 fireboxes and 4 engines, the train is shiny, and my personal favorite, water is big. Shout out to Nick Montfort, who's watching. He re-implemented this as part of his Memory Slam project. And this was not the first time somebody had generated text on computers. In 1952, Christopher Strachey, working with the Alan Turing, produced computer-generated love letters, like the one you see here. This one reads, "Darling love, you are my avid fellow feeling. My affection curiously clings to your passionate wish. My liking yearns for your heart, my tender liking. You are my wistful sympathy." And typically they're signed yours, MUC, Manchester University Computer. In 1959, Theo Lutz produced computer poetry in Germany by taking vocabulary and sentence structure from Kafka's The Castle, and Montfort has re-implemented these as well. What Yngwie did that was so radical with these computer-generated nonsense sentences is that he took a context-free grammar, in fact, built one on the computer, and nobody had done that before up to this point. If you built a Twitter bot in Tracery, that's context-free grammar. This is the first time somebody did something like that. And in fact, the notion of context-free grammar as we understand it had just been articulated by Chomsky in 1957 with his syntactic structures. This is latest, greatest. Now the sentences are evocative because they're nonsense sentences. They're semantically well-formed, but that's it. And they were so evocative that these sentences, unbeknownst to Yngwie, from what I can tell, ended up in underground literary periodicals, like the Insect Trust Gazette, where these sentences were right alongside work by William S. Burroughs. Burroughs had to have seen this stuff. He had to have been impressed by it or influenced by it. Now back at SDC, these two were deeply influenced by this work as cutting edge science. That was the cutting edge, the first work scientifically in natural language generation, and they wanted to take it farther. So their idea, which resulted in these sentences, was to produce semantically well-formed computer-generated sentences. Effectively, depending on definitions, for the first time. These are deeply generated using dependency structure, some of the latest theories in linguistics at that time. And the sentences read like this. Different crops include beets. The cash choice in the systems depends upon financing. Different cash choice in general systems depends upon climate. The cash crops include peanuts. They're not as evocative because they're semantically well-formed, again, using the latest and greatest in linguistics. This was the cutting edge. Trust me, this was the cutting edge in natural language generation in 1963. Klein later this year finally completes his dissertation, and he's taken a left turn from that field work in Southern California. He produces automatic decoding of written English, which is the first thesis in computational linguistics, the earliest thesis in computational linguistics by Sheldon Klein in 1963. This is a screenshot I took from the microfilm. I've scanned this. I don't know if anyone else has seen this in 60 years. I'll have it online at some point. A landmark work that nobody cares about. 1964, Sheldon Klein goes to Carnegie Tech, now called Carnegie Mellon University, the famous CMU. And here he gets into a few different projects. His first thing he does, of interest to us, is this weird effort in automatic summarization. The text on the left is an original text. The text on the right is computer generated as a summary of the original text. This is some of the earliest work in summarization. What's interesting here is a couple things. First of all, you'll notice that the text on the right is like the same size as the text on the left. So it's not in that sense a concise summary. What it is a rewriting with the same semantics by computer of some human written text. And what's really interesting is there's a narrative flavor. It's narrative text. So arguably this is some of the earliest work in computer narrative. Beautiful Helen loves successful John. Beautiful Helen was married. Helen who wanted John ate lunch. She killed a buddy. She killed Mary. Next, he moves on to this weird, wild simulation of language change in certain cultures in the Pacific. It's simulating generations of speakers, each represented as a grammar. The speakers interact and therefore share grammar rules, and the language represented as all the grammars of all the speakers evolves over time. It's also got social simulation built in. There's character definitions. This paragraph here is describing a world generation procedure that is very much akin to that of Dwarf Fortress 60 years later. And this is 1965 and nobody cares about this work. Here he is in 66 when he moves to the University of Wisconsin. And here he takes those previous two projects and combines them to produce something remarkable. The summarization stuff, that's the latest and greatest in natural language generation. He is the cutting edge. Believe me, he's the cutting edge there. And in terms of this simulation stuff, he's the only edge. No one's doing social simulation in 1965. No one's generating worlds in 1965. It's just Sheldon Klein. And he takes the simulation and the natural language generation technology and combines them into this project that he calls automatic novel writing. This is a tiny little report that appeared in 1969. It indicates a 1967 start date. And what's happening is they're using that simulation and the natural language tech to generate stories, and he wants to generate novels ultimately. Briefly, the methodology, as he explains, is that the plot is generated via Monte Carlo simulation. A stochastic behavioral model governs the plot and interaction of the characters. Each character is associated with various parameters, which are used as data for the behavioral rules and which uniquely define them. The state of the simulated plot universe is converted to a linguistic and then so forth. He's got a bunch going on in simulation and a bunch going on in natural language, all coming together. And his goal is to have a computer program write a novel that he will have published without the publisher knowing of the computational origins. 1971, he produces a technical report with the greatest title ever among technical reports, perhaps among human works, a program for generating reports on the status and history of stochastically modifiable semantic models of arbitrary universes, 1971, Sheldon Klein and his students. Now here in this report, they have source code. It's a very, very cool report. And he introduces the beginning of a computer-generated story. It was to be a murder mystery. And you can see here that it starts, and then there's a time frame, and then there was an error. There was a bug in the program. And he explains in the report that they went back the next day to fix this bug, and this is punch cards and so forth, batch processing, and the computer was gone. The computer at the University of Wisconsin, the one, the Burroughs 5500, was taken away from them. And so the project goes on hold for a bit. They get a new computer, and in 1973, and let me mention this first, how this works is this elaborate rule language that anticipates work in this area by decades, absolutely by decades. Arguably, he's implementing AI techniques that became famous in the late 70s and the 80s, such as a blackboard architecture, expert systems. And he's doing this all in 1971, and nobody cares about this. 1973, we get the canonical report on that project called Automatic Novel Writing. And here he includes, first of all, a more elaborate, again, source code, and first of all, a more elaborate rule language, incredibly elaborate. I'm still unpacking how this works. It's completely considering authorial concerns and all kinds of stuff that nobody thought about until later. And then it includes these 2,100 word murder mysteries. And he proudly explains how these are produced in like 18 minutes or something, which is very fast, he argues. And of course, we trust him. And here's an excerpt. Here's a murder scene from one of these 2,100 word murder mysteries. Dr. Bartholomew Hume blackmailed Edward. Edward was afraid of Dr. Hume. Lord Edward decided to kill Dr. Bartholomew Hume. The day was Sunday. The time was the sunrise. Lord Edward got up. Lord Edward went to the dark corridor. Lord Edward hid. Edward had a candle holder. Dr. Bartholomew Hume awakened early. Dr. Bartholomew Hume was usually early. Dr. Hume went for the walk. Edward waited for Hume. Lord Edward surprised Hume. Edward hit Dr. Bartholomew Hume with the candle holder. Dr. Bartholomew Hume groaned weakly. Dr. Hume died. Edward returned to the bedroom. And trust me when I tell you that this is the cutting edge of natural language generation in 1973. Sheldon Klein is the cutting edge. He's going the farthest among his generation. And these aren't impressive, but to me, they're so evocative. They're really interesting. They're different every time. Different things happen. And I personally love the language. And this ended up in literary periodicals in the 1980s, though more as a curiosity. And no one cares about this work. 1974, he moves on to operationalizing the narratology, the narrative framework of Vladimir Propp, first published in 1928, but it made it into the States in 1964, took academia by storm. It was a structuralist masterpiece. And Klein was one of the first people, actually found an earlier example, to put Propp's morphology of the folktale, as his formalism is called, into a computer. And these Russian folktales generated by computer using this same system are bonkers. They're absolutely out of sight. The Borisiviches live in a distant province. The father is Nicholas. The oldest son is Baldak. The younger son is Ivan. The oldest son is Maria. The younger daughter is Vasilisa. A dragon flies into the distant province. The dragon disguises himself as a bird. The dragon uses a sleeping potion on Nicholas. Nicholas falls asleep. Baldak is replaced with the dragon's son. Baldak sends Nicholas to search for the heart. Nicholas decides to search for the heart. Nicholas leaves on a search. Pause. Nicholas meets a witch along the way. The witch proposes that Nicholas listen to the gusla without falling asleep. Nicholas fails. Nicholas tries again. Nicholas fails again. Nicholas tries for the third time. Nicholas responds by staying awake while listening to the gusla. A magic wafer is consumed by Nicholas. Nicholas obtains transformability. Nicholas travels to the location of the heart in another kingdom. Nicholas travels on a ship. The heart is sold to Nicholas. Nicholas starts back home. Nicholas returns home. These are, to me, the most evocative stories ever produced by computer, some of the most evocative text ever produced by computer. It's absolutely bonkers stuff. This is one of the more conventional ones. He's got a whole appendix of this in a report. And even if you know Propp, this stuff is wild and nobody cares about this. Then in that same report, which is a doozy, he operationalizes the myth framework of Claude Lévi-Strauss, as presented in his The Raw and the Cooked, which is a masterpiece. The hero was deprived of water. The brother-in-law made the hero to climb the pole to capture the macaws. The hero told that the nest was empty. The brother-in-law removed the pole. The hero was stranded. A jaguar helped the hero to descend. The hero wandered through the country. The jaguar wandered through the country. The jaguar gave fire to the hero. And nobody cares about this. Next, Klein, ever so wild, says that our truly heroic test case is the automation of the analytic techniques used by Lévi-Strauss himself. It wasn't enough to operationalize and automate Lévi-Strauss's formalism, describing myth structure. He had to operationalize and automate Lévi-Strauss's analytic technique that produced that formalism. It's a degree of removal. It anticipates the expert systems work in AI of the 1980s, and it's one of the most bonkers and ambitious projects I've ever heard of. And Lévi-Strauss hears about it himself, and he invites Klein to Paris. And Klein goes to Paris with a few students, and they work together on taking Lévi-Strauss's beautiful mind and putting it into a computer program. And as far as I can tell, nothing comes of it. And nobody cares. We don't hear about Klein until 1981. He kind of disappears. He gets back into that fieldwork, actually, with Kawayasu. But in 1981, he progresses, and now he wants to generate opera. It will be computer-generated opera, where the stories are computer-generated, the music is computer-generated, the animations are computer-generated, and it's going to be on videotape. He's emphatic about videotape as the medium, and I love that attention to medium. And he did produce a videotape, and it was presented at a conference, and to this day, it's listed. Return to Flatland, it's what it's called, and Revolt in Flatland, sorry. And Revolt in Flatland to this day is listed in the massive directory of all operas ever performed in the US. What's even weirder than opera generation in 1981 is that in the same paper, a different one on the same project, he starts talking about how what the code is doing, and this is all the same code the whole way, I'll return to that notion. What the code is doing suggests a grand theory of human cognition. And he kind of gets to this with these amazing little doodles that I assume he did. And it's really strange, it's really weird. And Klein actually devotes the twilight of his career, the next 2 decades, to developing this grand theory of human cognition and its origins, as suggested by this code base that was producing all that strange text and narrative. His final paper, 2002, is The Analogical Foundations of Creativity in Language, Culture, and the Arts, the Upper Paleolithic to 2100 Common Era. And really, this is a grand account of cognition and its origins, looking at the archaeological record and the shapes of tools and how they evolved, and connecting back to the same ideas that drive this code base. In 2004, Klein teaches his last class at Wisconsin. It's called Natural Language and Multimedia. It's based around a mod of Unreal Tournament. And it's like, wow, now he was apparently about to get into interactive media, into video games. Who knows what would have came next had he lived a bit longer. Unfortunately, Sheldon Klein passed away in 2005 at the age of 70. So what the hell is happening here? We start off with these semantically well-formed sentences. We move on to these narrative summarizations. We move on to this strange simulation with social simulation and character generation and world generation and all this wild stuff. They're combined in this early story generator, which is refined into this one that produces evocative murder mysteries. Then he moves to Russian folktales. Then he moves to Lévi-Strauss's myth. Then he moves to Lévi-Strauss. Then he moves to opera generation. And finally, we get to this grand account of human cognition and its origins. So what the hell is Sheldon Klein's messy project? What was happening here? Well, how I see it is that he had this code base. It's the same code base, and it's being ported, but it's the same ideas, the same mechanisms. You can look at all his appendices, which typically have source code, from those sentences, those semantically well-formed sentences in 1964, up until the opera generation. You can think of that as one code base. And I think of Sheldon Klein and that code base as being in a cybernetic feedback loop. He was putting himself into the code, and the code was suggesting to him new ways of being in the world, new ways of understanding the world, new ways of understanding what humans are, how cognition works. Grand challenges somehow suggested in this code base that produced these cash crop sentences and then these murder mysteries and others. And nobody cares about it today. So what is this code? What is this thing, this whole project? What is it centered around? It's something called MESSI. MESSI is the meta-symbolic simulation system. Here's its user manual from 1976, written by the future mayor of Boulder, Colorado, Matthew Applebaum, with a history of MESSI by Sheldon Klein. MESSI is the meta-symbolic simulation system. MESSI is a framework for authoring story generators with this rich rule language that reminds me of systems that came out recently that were heralded as being super new. It's this rich rule-based authoring language for defining not stories, but story generators. And in that sense, it's decades ahead. Nobody was caring about authoring in this domain. No one was thinking about authoring tools, authoring frameworks, authoring concerns like what he writes about. No one was thinking about that until the early 2000s, maybe in the 90s. Also, it is a framework for executing story generators. So it does the simulation and it produces the outputs, the natural language outputs. In that sense, there's earlier story generators. No one knows about them really. I've written about one, but this is super early. And again, to have the authoring and the execution together and to really care about authoring, he's just light years ahead. He's decades before anybody. And nobody cares. And that's why I'm here to tell you about Sheldon Klein's MESSI project. This is pioneering work, completely unheralded. No one cited him in his career. He went off onto this grand theory that nobody cared about. And this stuff was at the cutting edge, at least the technical work, the entire time. But he was too weird, too damn weird for his generation, for the next one either. And then other people came along and reinvented what he did, but now it was time and they rode that wave and they got accolades, and nobody cares about Sheldon Klein's MESSI project, but I do, and I hope you do too now. And we're rebuilding it. Along with students Piper Welch and Teresa Chen at Carleton College, we are re-implementing MESSI today in Python. Our goals are twofold. We want to rebuild it to deeply understand it, and we want to rebuild it to get it back into the world today. We're porting it to Python. We're going to have a version on the web. And what people can do is generate stories from it and also create their own story generators in this 1970s rule language, which frankly is very fun to work in. This was Sheldon Klein's MESSI project. I'm James Ryan. Again, I'm on the faculty at Carleton College. Thanks so much for watching.
I'm muted. I'm muted. Oh snap!
That's just me.
I've been talking for a long time. Just mostly vamping. Thanking you. And thanking you, James and Jenny. You got my back. I appreciate it, Jenny. Jenny's always on the mute. So what I was going to say was thank you so much for being with us, James, and definitely let us know when there's some sort of usable version of your Python implementation. I'm sure WordHack folks would be interested in that. That seems like a really great project.
Awesome. Will do. Thanks for having me, Todd.
For sure. So we are now, we have one presenter left, but and this is usually the part where I put on some saxophone music and take a break. But I think I'm going to just power through here. We are right at 8:07, but I am going to do a quick NPR moment to let you know, you the audience, know how you can support Baby Castles and WordHack. So Baby Castles is a nonprofit. We are a DIY space that currently cannot have people in our space, which can be a difficult position to be in. We are lucky to have a number of generous supporting members that are keeping us afloat through all this period. And I want to show you how you can become a member here at withfriends.co/babycastles/join. These donations and these memberships go to support all Baby Castles programs, of which WordHack is one. This year, WordHack is funded by a grant from the Lower Manhattan Community Council, which Baby Castles applied for and got for us. That's how we're able to pay all our speakers this year in quarantine, which would be a lot tougher to do when we can't get in-person ticket sales. So your support of Baby Castles really means a lot for WordHack and Baby Castles in general. So this is how you can become a member. You can also directly support WordHack by getting a copy of our WordHack Anthology 2014 to 2019. Look at all these people. There's a bunch of people in there. We've got 56 people who have presented at WordHack, all have different projects in there. It's a really cool downloadable version, archive ready, lots of cool different projects in there. Those are some ways you can support WordHack and Baby Castles. This concludes the NPR portion of the evening, and now I am really excited to introduce Shannon Finnegan, who is an artist and accessibility advocate, who's been doing a lot of work around alt text and different forms of web accessibility standards. They have a really cool project called Alt Text as Poetry, which they're going to tell you some more about. Please give it up for Shannon Finnegan.
Thanks, Todd. I'm going to get ready to share my screen.
Oh yeah, clapping you in. Get those claps in the chat. I want to hear them. I want to hear your fingers. Oh yeah, bring it in. Okay, fading out, fading out, fading out. Over to you, Shannon.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm Shannon Finnegan. As Todd said, I'm an artist. I am disabled. I have a physical disability, and a lot of my work over the past 5 or 6 years has been related to access and accessibility. And a lot of my work prior to alt text as poetry was thinking about access in physical space, which is kind of closer to my own access needs, but especially thinking about access, we're often exposed to access that's really compliance oriented. It's this very kind of check a box, minimum effort mentality. And in a lot of my projects, I'm thinking about how we can have access that's more creative, that's generative, that's playful, that's kind of an ongoing iterative process and things like that. So just for some context, this is some work that I made prior to alt text as poetry. I'm very interested in like seating in art spaces and made some benches in order to try to kind of get more seating into gallery spaces. So this one says, this exhibition has asked me to stand for too long, sit if you agree. This one just says, I'd rather be sitting, sit if you agree. I've also been doing this kind of like multi-year project called Anti-Stairs Club Lounge, but in 2019, a version of this project was to protest the Vessel in New York City, which is this giant structure that's basically all stairs. It's like 154 interconnected stairways. So gathered a group of people to kind of push back on that and protest that. Yeah, so alt text as poetry, this is what I'm going to mostly talk about. This project started when I was a resident at I-Beam. I-Beam organized a cohort of residents that was themed around access. And so at that time, I wasn't thinking that much about technology, but I was like, well, I am thinking a lot about access. So how might some of that access that I've been thinking about in physical space, how might that be related to access in digital space? And was thinking a lot about image descriptions, being an artist and being on social media platforms like Instagram or Twitter, and kind of, wanting to be proactive about the accessibility of my own work. And so started developing this project with a collaborator, Bojana Kokliat, who's pictured here. Bojana is also a disabled artist, does advocacy work, also has an MA in disability studies, and Bojana is also a screen reader user, so she's someone with kind of a more day-to-day experience of image description and alt text. And so yeah, we've had the pleasure of collaborating on this project together over the past 2 years now. So just to kind of back up in case any of you are not familiar with what alt text is, alt text actually has a few different purposes. Some people are most familiar with it in the context of search engine optimization. It's also what displays when an image doesn't load, so it's really important for people who have slower internet connections. But we were really thinking about this use case around screen reader users. So this is from WebAIM, which is a helpful source for kind of some web accessibility stuff. So they write, alt text is read by screen readers in place of images, allowing the content and function of the image to be accessible to those with visual or certain cognitive disabilities. So a screen reader is a piece of software. It can be on a computer, on a tablet, really on any digital device. And for example, on a web page, the screen reader is reading out content. So it might start with the navigation options, the title of the page, the first paragraph, the second paragraph. But when the screen reader gets to an image, it can't read the image. And so instead it knows to look for this piece of information that's associated with the image in the code, which is called alt text. So the alt text is basically this non-visual alternative to the image. And so just, I think one of the reasons that alt text is really important right now is that on platforms like Twitter or Instagram, or thinking about personal websites and blogs, each kind of individual user has to add alt text to their images in order for that platform to be accessible. So this is a screenshot of the process on Twitter. They've been making some updates to this, so this is a kind of new process. But basically, if you're not a screen reader user or a web developer, like you're interacting with alt text through these like form fields where you're adding it during an upload process. And a lot of alt text, well, a lot of times there's just no alt text. And then even when there is alt text, it's often written in this really like dry, perfunctory way. And I often get this sense of like, if there's alt text, then it's accessible. It's kind of this checkbox. And Bojana and I have really been interested in thinking more about like, what's the texture and qualities of the alt text, and like, how is it giving access? These are just some like, I reference these questions a lot from Wikipedia's manual of style. I think these are just helpful kind of like basic questions to think about when you're writing alt text, which is like, why is this image here? What information is presenting? What purposes does it fulfill? Those are things that I'm kind of asking myself in kind of the most basic way. But the question that Bojana and I have been thinking about through this project is this idea of what can alt text learn from poetry? So thinking about this kind of whole world of thinking about language that already exists in the world of poetry, and that just by kind of placing alt text in that world, we can draw on some of the kind of thinking that exists there, and also maybe just shift the way that people approach writing it. So there are three things that we've been particularly focused on. One is this idea of attention to language. So just being thoughtful and intentional about how we write image descriptions, thinking about the words that we're using, the tone, the perspective. is the tone and perspective like aligned with the tone and perspective of the image or in contrast to that? Yeah, just kind of like really thinking about the language that we're using. Another is this idea of word economy. Like there are times for really long and lavish descriptions, but usually alt text aims to be pretty concise. So thinking about what we can learn from the world of poetry about being really expressive while also being quite brief. And then the third one is this idea of an experimental approach, which is like kind of trying out different things, thinking about different ways of writing image descriptions, writing alt text. And sometimes we talk about this idea of like building our collective toolkit. So like learning from other people's strategies or ways that they're approaching it. And yeah, kind of like as different communities and groups thinking about, okay, what do we value in an image description? What do we think is important? What are some of the ways that we want to do that? So just to give an example of what like poetic alt text might be, or alt text as poetry might be, this is a found example. This is from the Death Valley National Park Service Instagram account. There's this really beautiful time, or like wonderful time where this account was on Instagram was producing like really beautiful descriptions. They've since stopped, so I think it must have been like one person was kind of taking that initiative, but this is a piece of alt text that I really love and think about a lot. And it says, "Twisted wood branches in the foreground with an arc of stars in the sky above a dark distant mountain." So the project that Bojana and I have been doing, Alt Text as Poetry, sorry, just taking time, has taken a few different forms and has shifted and changed. While I was a resident at IBEAM in 2019, we were really focused on developing a workshop curriculum. Bojana and I have always kind of approached this material as not as like a voice of authority or as kind of the people who hold the answers, but instead trying to create time and space for different people to try this out and think about it together. So we developed this workshop curriculum. I think we've done the workshop, we're coming up on 40 times now, so we've done it with a lot of different groups. And basically the workshop introduces people to alt text if they aren't familiar with it already. And then we have this series of 4 writing exercises that are a chance for people to like actually start describing, and then time for discussion about that. So questions that come up or things that people are thinking about in the process, sharing some of the writing. Yeah, just being able to kind of talk about it and navigate it together. And then the kind of second year of the project, which has been 2020, we were really lucky to receive some grant funding from Disability Visibility Project to think about how this project might be disseminated in other ways that aren't just me and Bojana always being in the room to do the workshop. And so we decided to make a alt text as poetry book or workbook. So this is the print version of it. They come in these sets of 2 since the exercises are designed for at least 2 people. So just to encourage doing it together. But the workbook is basically like a self-guided version of the workshop. It has kind of, the curriculums kind of mirror each other. And there's the print version of it, but then we've also tried to make it available in a lot of different formats, including a Google Doc, a Word document, PDF, audiobook, and there's also a Spanish language translation. And all the digital formats are available for free online under a Creative Commons license. And then the last piece of it is a website. We were really feeling like the project needed a kind of digital home. And so I forgot to mention, the print workbook was designed by Companion Platform. So we worked with some designers to make this. And then with the website, we worked with Laurel Schultz and Taichi Wee to make the website, which is at alt-text-as-poetry.net. And there's lots of stuff, including the kind of different versions of the workbook are there. But I think some of the parts of it that I'm especially excited about are over here on the side. The tools section, so that's like just an area where we've put links to some projects and sources of information that we've been referencing throughout the project. There's also this area called ecosystem, where we link to a bunch of other artists who we have learned from around thinking about creative approaches to specifically image description, but also just kind of description practices, accessibility practices more generally. And then the last part is a blog, which we're calling Alt Text Study Club. And that's kind of the portion that is going to continue moving forward and expanding, where we're basically like gathering interesting or notable examples of alt text and writing little commentary on them. And yeah, hoping to kind of just gather some examples, again, kind of going back to that idea of a collective toolkit or learning from each other. And there's also the option on the blog for people to submit alt text that they've written or that they found and liked. And so, and we're also working on some interviews with people who either write description or use description or both. That will also be published on the blog. So yeah, so that's kind of my presentation. My website, if you want to know more about my work, it's at shannonfinnegan.com, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram at shannonfinnegan. Yeah.
Yeah, let's get those claps going in the chat. Thank you so much, Shannon. Really appreciate you being with us. I'm not muted. I'm not muted this time. All right, fantastic. Yeah, let's get those claps going in the chat. Really great to have you with us. Alt Text as Poetry is an awesome project. Check out that website. I posted it in the chat. Shannon didn't mention, but there is a digital version of the workbook, which is available under Creative Commons, which you can access there, or you can also order a set of the workbooks on that website. Well, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for being here for WordHack. I'm gonna go fade in our unofficial WordHack theme song of royalty-free saxophone music. Really appreciate you being here with us this WordHack, this year, this day. Let's actually have one more little, before I close the canned round of applause YouTube clip. One more round of applause for all our presenters tonight: Olivia, Jack, James, Ryan, and Shannon Finnegan. Let's give it up one more time. Oh yeah. Little claps with a beat behind it. Oh yeah. What a good crew of speakers, and what a good crowd. Really appreciated having all of you in the chat this evening. And thank you for a great year of WordHack. And once again, we'd like to thank the LMCC for supporting WordHack through its grant this year. That's how we're able to pay all our speakers this year. I don't know. It's challenging running, transitioning a in-person show to being online, and I just want to say to all of you, I really appreciate you coming out to the Twitch version of these shows, because WordHack is really one of those things that keeps me sane and keeps me going month to month, and I'm really glad that I get to keep doing it, and I'm glad that you still come out and respond in the chat. Yeah, thank you for still coming out, and WordHack's gonna keep going, gonna be back in 2021. Our next one, oh, that's fitting, we're starting 2021 on January 21. So come back for that one. Yeah, we'll still be here on the Baby Castles Twitch channel, so come check it out. That's all I have for you this time, so I'll see you next time. Have a good holidays and a good new year, everybody. Catch you at WordHack in January. Slow fade out. Slow fade out. Here we go. It's going to be the slowest fade out. I've got 24 seconds left in this song. Oh, wait. Faded out too fast. All right, going to get a little louder. And I'm going to fade it out. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Okay. Fading it away. Oh, I'm fading. Fading away. Everybody.